Well, you're watching World News live from Warsaw. My name is Sasha Farbach. On Sunday, Russia successfully tested its nuclear-powered Burevestnik cruise missile, which Moscow says can pierce through every air defense system. Now, according to Jeffrey Lewis from the Middlebury Institute, while Russia is, quote, crazy enough to build a nuclear-powered missile, it doesn't mean it's the only country with such capability.
This missile is really like a small airplane. It has a jet engine on it. And just like a jet engine uses fuel to burn oxygen, this does exactly the same thing, but it uses a nuclear reactor to burn the oxygen and produce the thrust. The system is intended to defeat a missile defense. And so the idea is because it can fly for basically an unlimited range, then it can fly around defenses. On the other hand, you could build more defenses, or you could use aircraft to go intercept them. So I don't think the system is invincible, but it's part of the deepening arms race that we're in, where they've come up with a new system and now we have to come up with something to shoot it down. I think we are just generally seeing a greater emphasis on nuclear weapons. We're seeing countries use nuclear threats more and more to get their way in the world. And so while I think a lot of these programs have existed for years, if not decades, the reason Putin is doing this on live TV while wearing fatigues is because he wants to send a certain message. So the United States investigated a very similar system in the 1950s, but decided that it was just too much of an environmental nightmare, and so chose not to build it. So it's true that only Russia has been crazy enough to actually build one of these things, but it doesn't mean that Russia is the only country that could build such a thing. It's just other countries, I think, have thought better of it.
Let's stay with that same topic now. So it's not appropriate for Moscow to boast about testing new missiles while the war in Ukraine drags on. Now, that's according to U.S. President Donald Trump. Now, his comments come after the Kremlin announced the conclusion of successful tests of the first ever nuclear-powered missile, the Burevestnik, which allegedly flew over 14,000 kilometers and, according to Putin, can pierce any missile defense system.
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shores. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles. And they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time, but, you know, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. He ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon fourth year. That's what he ought to do instead of testing missiles.
Let's move on now to U.S. and China relations. Now, a major breakthrough in an escalating trade war between the U.S. and China was made on Sunday. The two countries reached a framework agreement that could ease months of rising tensions over tariffs and rare earths exports. Now, the announcement came after 2 days of talks on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
After intensive negotiations, U.S. and Chinese trade delegations confirmed they've agreed on a framework for a new trade deal, signaling a potential de-escalation in a dispute that's threatened to disrupt global supply chains. The talks follow U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to impose sweeping 100% tariffs on Chinese imports starting November 1st, in retaliation for Beijing's expanded export controls on rare earth minerals and materials, which are crucial to high-tech manufacturing. Speaking to ABC's Martha Raddatz from Kuala Lumpur, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirmed the breakthrough.
The president had given me maximum leverage when he threatened 100% tariffs if the Chinese imposed their rare earth global export controls. So I think we have averted that so that the tariffs will be averted.
Well, China's international trade representative Li Chang'an also confirmed the agreement, stressing that stable U.S.-China trade relations are vital not only for both economies, but for global economic stability. The news was certainly welcomed in Europe, where industries rely heavily on rare earth imports. Just this Saturday, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen warned that China's export restrictions posed a major threat and announced that the Commission was working on a contingency plan.
At least to some extent, this is part of wider economic friction between China and the United States, but it has a huge impact on us here in the European Union. We all know how important rare earths are for our industry, whether for cars, semiconductors, or military equipment. The decisions announced by the Chinese government on October 9th poses a significant risk.
President Trump arrived in Malaysia Sunday, the first stop on a 5-day Asia tour that will culminate with a face-to-face meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea on October 30th, where the two leaders are expected to finalize the deal.
But we've got many things. I think it's going to turn out to be a very good meeting.
For now, the world's tech and manufacturing industries are watching closely, hoping this tentative truce between Washington and Beijing holds, and that the next round of talks delivers lasting stability.
Let's move now back to Central Europe. This year, Austria celebrates the 70th anniversary of its neutrality and the 60th anniversary of its National Day. Now, commemoration ceremonies were held across the country on Sunday to mark these special events.
Sunday was a special day for Austrians as it marked two anniversaries, 60 years since the introduction of a national day and 70 years since its declaration of neutrality.
For us, neutrality means being militarily independent, but morally clear in our position. We are committed to a Europe that needs peace, but also the defense capabilities to support that peace. And we know that peace also needs people who are prepared to defend it.
Austria's National Day falls on October 26th and reflects the political developments that took place in the country following the end of World War II. When World War II finished in 1945, France, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States all occupied Austria, dividing it into 4 zones. When they finally left 10 years later, the Austrian government signed the Declaration of Perpetual Neutrality exactly on October 26th, and this day became a public holiday. This year, just as in previous ones, the military and political institutions hosted a full program of events. These included a traditional wreath-laying ceremony at Vienna's Heldenplatz by the country's president and prime minister to honor fallen soldiers and victims of the resistance. A military display of equipment to the public, including armored vehicles and aircraft, was also held. National Day was a perfect opportunity for President Alexander Van der Bellen to remind the citizens how important it is to protect their country.
Europa und damit auch Österreich.
Europe, and therefore Austria too, is increasingly exposed to threats and attacks, whether cultural, economic, technological, or through disinformation. It is therefore essential that we protect and defend ourselves better than we have done in the past.
Especially now, when the entire European continent finds itself straight in the crosshairs of the Kremlin's hybrid warfare campaign.
Sunday evening, over 1,000 people demonstrated in the streets of the Georgian capital, 1 year after the pro-Russian Georgian Dream Party won parliamentary elections. As stated by the former president of the country, Salom Zurabishvili, who attended the protest, most Georgians have always been and remain pro-European and do not want to become, quote, a Russian colony.
The vast majority of the population has always been and remains pro-European, wants democracy, wants independence, doesn't want to become a Russian colony. And that is a responsibility also for the European Union. It's a responsibility for us, and we're standing there because of that, but it's also a responsibility for our partners.
The only way out of the situation we are in is to fight until the regime falls, united and standing together with a common effort. Everyone, parties, students, and all those who desire a better future for this country must stand together. This is precisely what the regime fears.
There has probably never been such a sense of unity, as we all desire a European future, but only and solely through peace. Moreover, it is absolutely essential because it is simply unthinkable for this country to have a European future under this government. That is why we are also demanding the resignation of this government.
A Turkish court has issued another formal arrest order for Istanbul's jailed mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu on suspicion of political espionage. İmamoğlu, a key rival of the Turkish president, has been in jail since March, pending trial on corruption charges. He received a new jail sentence in July for insulting the chief Istanbul prosecutor. The jailed mayor denies all charges against him. The latest court ruling accuses İmamoğlu of engaging in graft to raise funds for his presidential campaign and espionage to ensure international support. İmamoğlu's political party denied the accusations, describing them as a politicized attempt to remove candidates that could threaten President Erdogan's chances of victory in future elections. According to the Turkish state-run Anadolu news agency, the court also issued warrants for two other people, including Merdan Yanardağ, editor-in-chief of a private news channel, Tele1. The channel previously critical of the Turkish government was seized by the state on Friday, citing espionage charges. The main avenue in Mexico City was transformed on Sunday into a spectacle of skeletons and other ghastly figures as Mexicans begin celebrations ahead of the Day of the Dead. The parade is among the many events held throughout the city in which families honor their loved ones who passed away, as well as celebrate the continuity of the cycle of life.
Mexico is a country with a rich culture, and I believe that the Day of the Dead is one of the biggest celebrations. That's why Mexico City is so colorful during this time of the year with events like this. We can enjoy our traditions. People who come to Mexico can enjoy what Mexico is all about, its traditions and the people.
We came to the parade in our van. This is the second year we've participated because it's a tradition we love. I come with my children, my whole family.
We represent the cartinas. We represent death, that magic they have, those colors.
And with that bit of culture, we conclude world news here. But stay tuned, there's much more coming up right here on TVP World, so stay tuned.